Hi, welcome to Citizen Jane Film School. That's what we call our panel discussions about filmmaking before our festival kicks off. And this is our 5th year of the Citizen Jane Film Festival. And my name's Kerri Yost. I'm a co-director of the festival. And these lovely ladies came a bit early to talk about their films and put them in context. So those of you who are watching at home, you can watch what we're talking about and hopefully see their films this weekend. Before I introduce them, we're actually going to show kind of a mashup of clips of their films to give you a sense of what work they're going to be discussing, and then afterwards we're going to introduce them in person. So if you guys are ready to show those clips, we're ready to go, and you can look up here.
No, I'm moving.
Why do we heed the dark?
We heed the dark for it brings the riders.
Who are the riders?
The riders are our keepers.
Why are we kept?
We are kept for our children.
I went back over the rise. Do you think there's an end to it?
Defense. There's no end to it.
If I tried to cross, would you kill me? And my children, would you kill them?
What have you been doing out in those hills?
I've done nothing.
Don't lie to me.
I've been hunting.
Then why do I hear a rider?
How can I know? I want to cross. Let me see.
Ask yourself.
I cannot live in here not knowing.
Come back inside, Jamie. Oh. Oh, Sam! No, you can't come out here.
Wow.
Oh, great.
Wow. It's different from up here. We're on a spaceship. We've been traveling the universe, but now we're going home to our own planet, Megatron. Navigator, where are we?
Lost in space, Captain, but I can find our way out of here.
We must be tangled up in the blanket.
Tie up the prisoner. Don't try to escape. I'll set our course for Megatron.
They sailed south by southeast, navigating by the stars. Warp factor 5, full speed! Past the Bermuda Triangle, between Africa and South America. It's gonna get rough. One day, the sky went dark, and the wind started to blow, and the ocean threw the boat around like a ball. Oh God! God help us!
Christian, be careful.
And right in front of them was a ship with 100 sails on it. As the boat drifted closer, they saw pirates. Smelly pirates with tattoos and missing teeth. Aliens! Aliens! Take them out! The pirates threw a big net down on them and hoisted them up over the deck. Then Redbeard, the captain, said, "Ah, I spy a young man. A fancy pants. We'll have to get rid of him." So they put him on the plank. And all the pirates were yelling, "Walk the plank! Walk the plank!" So he walks out onto the edge. and looks down into the ocean.
Captain, it's a meteor!
The steering mechanism! It's jammed! I can't control it! Does a triple backflip with a half twist
Christian.
into the ocean.
Christian!
I'm all right with the other lead singer. He's supposed to be pretty good and look and sound just like him.
I remember my mom singing Journey in the car and being like, oh God, Mom. But now being like, oh, this is so awesome.
I mean, it'd be nice if it was the original band, but hey, he sounds just like him and it's still music, so it's still just as good.
If they picked him, he's gotta be somewhat good.
I think he should be from here. I do.
Are you racist? No, I was kidding. No, I was kidding.
Not at all. Oh. But it would just be better if he was, I think. I kind of like that he's not. I don't know.
Yeah, I do too.
Gives him variety. Yeah. I think it brings in more people.
How are you?
Good.
What's happening?
How you doing?
Good.
Got your weight set up for you, and then you've got a three-way mirror there to check out your guns.
Shit. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no problem.
There are people out there who just want me to fail, who just want me to falter, to lose it, you know. So they will have justification of whatever kind of words they accused against me. They would call me monkey, garbage, an impersonator, a karaoke boy. If I will take it seriously, I'll get hurt. It's not going to end. I will answer back, and then they will answer back, and they love it. The attention that I'm gonna give to them. They're just diehard fans who got so used with Steve Bergh's voice. And then I have no argument about that. I'm also a very big fan of Bergh. From where they are coming from, I understand. You know, and he's really got one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard.
We build our house in Mexico or North Carolina, like you wanted near your mom's. I was thinking that maybe you could plan the whole thing and you could build it, but I could be in charge of decorating it, and I'll keep it clean every day with bleach if you wanted me to.
I'm not gonna let anything happen to you.
I love you. I told you I didn't want to come here. I knew we had to come here. I told you I didn't want to come here. You told me you were fucking. I hate your mouth so much. I hate your mouth. I told you I didn't want to come here. I told you I didn't want to come here. I told you not to come here. I was thinking about it, and I don't think if I lived forever I could ever meet anybody else who'd do anything like this for me.
A show of hands, how many of you when you were in high school had the sexting, the naked picture?
The naked picture? Oh.
The adult entertainment world has completely infiltrated the mainstream.
And I do blame that on the digital age.
My first serious boyfriend watched X-rated movies and stuff. And he was like, oh, it's bigger than most girls, like what's wrong? And I just feel that it would be a huge turn on to a guy to look like a porn star.
Personally, haven't seen that much. I mean, I know what's out there, but I haven't really seen it.
I mean, I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, like kids had access to dirty magazines.
Yeah, that's so old school.
So if now you're on the internet, I mean, why wouldn't a kid your age look at like something online?
Doesn't she look pretty?
You got Lady Gaga
Yo,
tickets.
look up. Lady Gaga.
You know people are getting plastic surgery on their vaginas?
Wait, actually?
Before and after. Before and after photos.
Phoebe.
Dr. Benson in Texas. Oh, she definitely needed some labia surgery.
I do trust you.
By
You
March.
really didn't because you said that you didn't want to see any slutty photos. We're like the first generation to have what we have. So there's no one before us that can kind of guide us. I mean, we are the pioneers.
Bonnie found out about our condition when she was around 11 years old and had surgery soon after to remove her testes.
I actually remember it, like the way that it exists in my memory is that like I went in for a hernia operation, but when I actually look back at it, that's what I was told to tell everyone else. So obviously I just started believing what I was saying all the time to people, that I was having a hernia operation, that you know, to fix a hernia, but no, what they did is it was like I had my testes removed. Yeah. So what did they tell me? I don't know. I was quite young, and I think there was a bit of a trauma that was involved with it. You know, like I certainly have a huge scar, physical scar.
I disappeared for one summer. I remember people asking me about my holiday and having to make up some lies or something like this, some lies. After being examined and operated on, they decided that they wanted to bring in 10 student nurses to stare at my fanny whilst they stuck their fingers in me and stuff like that. But yeah, I farted and laughed, and then Dr. McGuck went over and washed his hands distastefully, so I think I got my own back. I was pretty much told that I had an abnormal body from a very early age by medical officials and my parents and stuff like that, you know. And at the same time, I was offered actually no healthy model of what a real body was like, you know, what is a normal body. The idea of normal is in flux. Nothing in nature is normal.
Hopefully that gave you a taste of some of the films that are this weekend. And just if this is the first time you've experienced Citizen Jane, we show documentaries and fiction, short and feature length. So we have several of our feature length filmmakers here that represent different areas of production. And I called this panel Superwoman, Amazing Feats in Filmmaking. Because I feel like sometimes finishing any movie is quite an accomplishment. There's a million different reasons that it can go awry, even to get to the point to make the movie in production. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about the backstory of making some of your films and maybe what the most challenging aspect of the production or pre-production or even post-production process was. I'm going to go to my left and my right and introduce the filmmakers, and that way you get a sense of what film they represent. So to my left is Kris Swanberg, and she's here with the fiction feature Empire Builder, which was not the first clip you saw, it was later. Kris, what was the most challenging aspect of making Empire Builder? And feel free to contextualize it more if you need to explain a little more.
I always have, the hardest thing for me is sort of my internal struggles with making anything, and I lack the confidence that I feel like maybe other people have sometimes when I come up with ideas and when I plan my films, and I talk myself out of it a lot, and I have to do things like tell everyone I'm making a movie so that I actually do it, book tickets so that I actually go to Montana to make the movie. So I just have a really hard time I don't know, not motivating myself, but, feeling brave, sort of, to do it.
It's a big plunge, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's my biggest struggle, definitely. And I have a hard time also fleshing out ideas. I don't know, I'm really collaborative, and when I get, how I've made my films, I've directed 2 features now, and I don't usually write a script. I just write an outline and then have a small crew. And for both of my films, my first film was called It Was Great, But I Was Ready to Come Home. And we shot that in Costa Rica. And then this film, Empire Builder, we shot it in Montana. And it was a super small crew, and we left wherever places we lived, and we went to this other place. And that feels really good to me. And I feel like I always want to make movies like that now, because once I get there and I have that small crew, it becomes super collaborative. It becomes almost like a sleepover, and everybody's focused on that. Both of the places I went were kind of remote, so there was no internet or like cell phone service, so everybody kind of just has to hang out together, and that's how I've managed to go through with it. But yeah, so that's my big challenge, is sort of my own, I don't know, I can be my own worst enemy sometimes, I think.
I think that's true for a lot of filmmakers and artists in general. And it's funny because in her film, it seems like a pretty personal film.
It
and
is,
I thought you were going to say the fact that I directed my husband and my baby.
Yeah, no, yeah, that actually
wasn't
hard. Yeah, directing him now would be kind of hard, but he was only 10 months old at the time, so it wasn't too bad.
So if you do see Empire Builder, the man that plays Caitlin Scheel, who's the actress, her husband is her real husband,
right?
And her child in the movie is her real child.
Right.
So it really was an intimate affair.
Yeah, definitely.
That's interesting. Capella's here with Don't Stop Believin'. And that's the documentary that actually plays tonight, our opening night film about the band Journey. Capella's the producer on that. And please tell us, pray tell, what was the big challenge?
I mean, I'm the producer, so you're going to get different answers from
the
director.
Well, and I like that. We actually represent different parts of the process. Sure.
Money. I mean, it was always money. I mean, I think people see the film and they think it's big, because of the music or the topic. But it was always self-funded from the very beginning to even now. Like, our deliverables are due soon, and we're trying to figure out what credit cards we can put them on. It's always money.
And it's your job to help raise the money. And from what I understand, I could be wrong, but I remember at the premiere, you kind of had to start making the movie before you could really sort all that out, because the story was happening. So,
right. I mean, Ramona found the story. My director is Ramona Diaz. She's wonderful. She's at another film festival. She couldn't be here, unfortunately. She found the story. So it's a good story how she found it. It's a little long, so I'm not going to go into it. But she was able to spend a day with the band and cut up something and meet Arnell. And so that's what she had, and she showed it to me. We both live in Baltimore, and she showed it to me at a Starbucks. So I'm like, yeah, all right, girl, we got to make this. We have to make it. And she said, well, they're on tour right now, because the whole thing was to film his first year on tour. She said, well, they're on tour right now. I said, right now? She said, yeah. And I said, all right, well, let's go. And she said, what do you mean, let's go? I was like, let's go. And so we just went, like, in a few days, we crewed up with some great crew that was going to do, you know, deferred, and we started charging stuff. Or I started first. I said, I'll pick up, I'll take care of it. So I just started charging things. Now, this is in 08. So 08's right when everything crashed. So no one was giving money in 08, right? So we started charging stuff. We started hitting all the East Coast, and then we started hitting all the Midwest. Then I ran out of money and credit and everything. And so Ramona picked up the West Coast. But we always thought, like, once we get in a can, we'll get funding. Once we cut a scene, we'll get funding. Once we have a rough cut, we'll get funding. But it was always like, and we would just get, all right, let's put one foot in front of the other, and 5 years later we have a film.
I'm glad you say that, though, because I think that is a great challenge, and people don't understand that. Like, you know, it's such a great challenge to even raise the money, and particularly with documentary, it lasts for, 2008 and it's 2012. That's how long it can be to tell and cover a story like that. So.
Right. Yeah, it's good, though. I'm glad we did it.
Yes, you have to come tonight and support them with money to see it, because that's how they make their money back, just so you know. And next to Capella is Juliet Bergh, who came all the way from New Zealand. Thank you very much. And the film that we started off with was Existence, and that's Juliet's film. Do you want to... I can imagine all sorts of things being a challenge, but you tell me.
Yeah, but I suppose also from a creative point of view, the challenge is financial, and the pressure is to make it work for what you've got, because the limitations are that you're not going to get your pickup shots. You're not going to be able to reshoot something if it didn't work. And if you've got half a morning to shoot a scene, you're never going to get that scene again. So if something goes wrong, there were quite often moments where you had to rewrite on the spot to get the story beat that you needed for that scene, because we shot in quite an extreme kind of climate, so sometimes there was no way we were going to be able to get dialogue, or the horse was freaked out by the wind turbine, and so the horse was out of the scene, and so you kind of rewrite on the spot. And I think throughout the process of the micro-budget filmmaking, it's thinking on your feet, being really quick at getting creative solutions and making decisions, and you know, sometimes they'd work and sometimes they wouldn't, and it's a learning process. And once you get into post-production, you really see the consequence of some of the decisions you make, and some of them work and some of them don't. And and I suppose from a creative point of view, that's the challenge.
And we'll go to the right now. Kim Sherman, she's here with Sun Don't Shine, and she's the producer. And if you notice that the actresses look familiar, Caitlin Shiel is in Empire Builder and Sun Don't Shine, which I'm really excited about, because it exposes, she's an amazing actress that you probably recognize from other independent films, but the kind of range she has, I think, is pretty incredible. And these films are very different, even though they both take place in very specific parts of our country. So what was the challenge of Sun Don't Shine?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had very similar situations to each of the people who've gone before. We kind of ran into production with just an outline and not really having a full script, but it worked in our situation, and it worked for our director's process, Amy Simon's process. But I think now, looking back, you know, and having similar challenges, what we're facing right now is being done with the film, having premiered at a festival, and having a film that a lot of people really love and talk about, and we've had really great reviews, but people aren't quite sure how to market the film. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're kind of facing, and it's actually been our biggest challenge, because people feel like, you know, it's a genre film, but it's not genre enough. It's an art house film, but it's not art house enough. But we really love it, but we don't know how to talk about it. And so kind of guiding that process, and as a producer, and working very collaboratively with Amy to try to form a way for people to talk about the film and to understand it, and to feel like the feelings that they have, the strength of the feelings that they have for really loving the film can plunge the film in, and will be universal with audiences as well. So,
and I think that's kind of the irony about filmmaking, is that the more original your film is, the harder it is to explain what it is, because it's not like this and that and the other.
Yeah, and I've talked to other producers about films that have been coming out this year, like Beasts of the Southern Wild is another really good example. It's a film that's not like anything else, and they had a really hard time figuring out how to talk about the film and how to market the film. They knew they had something really special and really original, and that's exactly how we felt the entire time. We knew we had something special and very original, and we were very proud of it. And you know, we were getting really great reviews in the New Yorker and the New York Times and in LA and everywhere. Everyone loved it, but they just weren't sure what kind of film it was. And I think that that's okay. I think it's okay to not fit into a category.
And that's true. I mean, you should check out the reviews if you get a chance, because they're stellar, and I think that will help it go a long way. And I think it's interesting because that's why people say making the film's kind of half the job. Figuring out how to get it in front of audiences is the other half, and it's, if you're a first-time filmmaker, sometimes that's a surprise. It's like, well, I just finished it, you know? and no, there's a long way to go still with that. So, and thanks for bringing it here. Phoebe is here with the film Orchids, the documentary. And would you like, I have some ideas that we were talking about last night, but I'd love to know the most challenging aspect.
I guess the most challenging aspect was that I decided to make a film about something extremely personal to me. And it was like probably... like, I don't know, the defining trauma story of my life, I guess. So in the first instance, you know, like it was about sort of like, do I want to out myself and tell this very personal story about me and my family. I didn't actually think about my family too much at first. I was just sort of more internalized and like going, oh, how's this going to make me look? And then I realized once I wanted to do it that actually I had to drag my family into it because they were very central to the story. Because I mean, you saw on the screen that was actually my younger sister, because I have a condition called AIS and she has it too because it's genetic, and then my mum's, you know, passed it on, and so, you know, sort of like everyone had to get pulled in quite unwillingly a lot of the time. And so therefore it was about sort of like explaining why I wanted to do this, and I sort of had to be straight about that myself. So that was a huge challenge for me, because then I was like, yeah, well, why do I want to tell this story? And you know, I sort of had in mind that it would help other people, maybe other young people who are going through what I went through and didn't have the support, or don't have the support, or, you know, were living with secrecy or shame. And you know, like, so I just sort of wanted to sort of do it for them, but to convince my mum and my dad and my sisters and other members of my family that that was a good idea and that it was worth outing the whole family for that one specific purpose. Took quite some years actually to do. It was like a really gradual process. So yeah, and it was just that sort of step by step, baby step, like, what else am I going to talk about? Am I going to talk about this? Oh, okay, that's really full on. Like, maybe I shouldn't, I'll leave that for a bit longer and maybe work on this. But then, you know, so it was just, it took a long time to make for that reason, about 6 or 7 years altogether.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What I appreciate, though, in your film is they show their ambivalence on camera, and I think that's what makes it feel human. And I feel like your film, thinking of marketing, seems like a niche film, but actually it seems very much like a universal film about family.
That's
and
right.
About a road trip, you know, with this very unique genetic situation that your family shares. So I feel like it's got these universal storylines in it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the feedback, like, because it's shown around the world now and been broadcast, etc. And yeah, the main feedback is that from people, it's like, well, we didn't have intersex in our family, but we had this, and it was sort of made our family dynamic similar, so we really relate to it. So there was kind of like, I did get that feedback, and I found that was really heartening, because then people, could just take away the intersex almost and then put their own, you know, thing in there and sort of go, okay, what you're doing is powerful, because, you know, you're telling a story, but it's, you know, it can help other people, not just people with intersex. So yeah.
And I look forward to, I think all of these films, afterwards we have a Q&A with the filmmaker to discuss it, and there's things I don't want to give away about several films. Several of them have plot lines that I really look forward to the Q&A afterwards, that you guys can ask those questions. To her right is Brittany Huckabee, who's here with Sexy Baby. She's the editor and producer of Sexy Baby, the clips that you saw about cybersex in the digital age. This film just premiered recently, and I'd love to know the most challenging process of that. I know it was kind of a race to get it done.
Well, this film was, as most films are, it was a huge challenge from the get-go. The directors, who unfortunately are not here, are the ones who came up with the idea and put their life savings into doing this film. So it was basically a broad general topic that they were trying to break down into character stories, first of all. Then there was no money for it. Then no one understood what they wanted to do. And they were first-time filmmakers who were trying to use a camera for the first time and do film interviews for the first time. And so when I entered this process, which was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, they said, you know, we have this topic and we have all this footage and we have no idea what to do with it. And so I'm basically the storyteller who comes in and was not in the field with them at all. I did advise them a bit on some of the stuff they were doing in the field, but my job was to sort through all that footage and figure out how these 3 characters, who all are very different from one another, except for the fact that they're women and they live in a highly sexualized culture. But other than that, they had nothing in common. Their stories had nothing in common. And so my challenge as a storyteller was to try to sort through all of that and figure out how to thematically connect their stories in a way that wasn't terribly confusing, and also to deal with the various technical challenges with this footage that, you know, we have, you know, the directors were shooting and running sound, and they had never done that before in their lives. So there was a lot of stuff to kind of work around with that. So that was my challenge. And also, just personally, this was a challenge for me because I've never actually worked on a film where I wasn't the one in the field capturing all the stuff and directing the action. And so it was an interesting experience to come in after the fact. And I actually felt like a total creeper at the premiere when I was sitting right in the middle of all the characters who had never seen me before, but I knew them all very intimately. And that was a new experience for me, and I think a bit of a challenge because it was hard to know how to relate to them because I felt very, very odd sitting with them. But yeah, our challenges from a storytelling point of view was trying to put those weave those stories together. But also some of the stories were they actually hadn't shot with the characters that much. The woman who has the surgery that you saw in the trailer, they really only shot with her for a few days. And the challenge for me was to try to draw a story arc out of that and reveal things that kind of, we already knew going into it, everything that had happened, but sort of reveal it in drips and drabs throughout the film so it felt like there was a story arc when maybe there really wasn't. There was a story arc. I'm not saying that there wasn't, but to try to build some drama and some suspense and that kind of thing.
Well, and you did that really well, and I can't believe that that's how much footage you had, because it's very well balanced in the film, these different stories, even though I realize the young girl kind of dominates it because you just see her.
We have tons of footage of her.
Right, and
yeah.
she's this really powerful presence who I hope runs our country one day, maybe, or something. But you just watch her go from 12 to 14 on camera, basically, and that's pretty powerful, and it says so much about the other people. But what I think it's interesting what you say about having to switch roles, because you've been doing the directing and been in the field, and if you recognize Brittany, it's because she was here for True False with a film called Mosque in Morgantown, which is really brilliant. And that is different, learning different roles. And we were talking about the roles of producing are vague now, and because it's so hard to make these films, which kind of leads me to the next aspect of this panel, which I will start by saying Nora Ephron, the writer and director who died recently, said that the one thing she wouldn't miss when she died was being on another panel about women in film. And I can appreciate that. I've been on a few. And you always hear this cliche, like, you're juggling. I hear this a lot even, like, you're juggling so much, that's great, and how do you do it all? And it's like, well, like, balls fall left and right, actually. But I did want to talk about, I mean, you're all talking about these challenges of raising the money, making the film, and all the other things you try to do. For instance, those of you who are producers, you're balancing multiple projects, and then you have to, like, put all your attention on one when it's hot and needs it. Or some people are paying the bills by doing what they do, but because these are passions of love, you're self-financing them. And I just wanted to speak, if you could talk about that a little bit, and I'll kind of open it up, but it could be either personally juggling things that you're interested in. I feel like that's the secret. I teach film here at Stevens College, and that's what's hard to teach them, is that balance, like, because it will suck your soul, you know, when you're living that 14-hour day making this project happen, but then to find the energy to make the next project and to keep going for a career in that is really different. And I've noticed that people who tend to work in our profession for a long time figure that out somehow. because otherwise they get burnt out pretty quickly. Kim, I'll throw that to you, since you're a producer and you've had multiple projects that are really hot right now. I mean, we could actually make a festival with just films that Kim has produced recently. And I think it's really amazing that you've managed to be a musician as well during this time. Those are both two really challenging, time-oriented, travel-oriented art forms. How do you do both of those?
It's hard. I mean, I think that's the important thing that you said, is that sometimes things do fall down. And I'm still very new to my career. I started out in commercials and moved into features just a few years ago, and I did work very hard and very quickly, and so I have a lot now that's out, and but I'm still trying to learn how to balance it all. And I play drums in a band that tours, and we record music frequently, and so luckily those two things are very compatible, because well, just because of who I'm in a band with. And it's a very good friend who also plays in other bands, and so it just works out that when I'm on set, he's usually touring with other bands, and so I'm able to find balance in that regard. But I think it's just learning what my strengths and weaknesses are, and just being really honest with myself about the things I'm good at and the things I'm not good at, and trying to be better at those things. And then I have been learning how to say no, which was always very hard, because you just always think, if I don't take this project, I might not have something down the road, and you know, in independent and micro budget, you don't make a lot to work on a film, and you work on film very hard for at least 3 years, when it's fiction. And so you just have to learn how to take care of yourself and what your needs are, and being honest about your strengths and weaknesses is not only, you know, helpful to you, but helpful to the projects that you're on. So I mean, I don't think I have an answer, because I am still trying to figure it out. Yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting process, and I really love it. But it takes everything you have.
Well, I'd be interested, because we have an Australian and a Kiwi from New Zealand here, and I think in the United States, it's capitalist, and you raise the money and you make it. And I know sometimes you have other options for raising the money, but it's still very limited. I don't know. Actually, enlighten me. Are you forced to have multiple jobs in Australia to make movies in the same way that we are to make a career out of it?
I would say so. I mean, like, we do have funding options, like through the state and federal governments in Australia, sort of thing. But to apply for those are extremely competitive, and you know, your project has to be competitive. Basically, it's got to be marketplace ready and all that sort of thing. And so to get that funding, yeah, it's quite a challenge, and it's like usually a huge application process, etc. And you know, you have to have usually a pre-sale from like a local, like ABC kind of broadcaster or something like that. So yeah, it's really challenging, and yeah, I guess you do sort of lurch from project to project. I sort of balance it out with a bit of teaching, like at the universities and things like that, and that sort of seems to fill some of the gaps, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's probably becoming more commercial. I think in the olden days, like the sort of documentary filmmakers of yore go, oh yes, that's right. It was like a chook raffle, and you just like got like this big pool of money to go out and make your film if you were lucky, and you know, like it was all this sort of like, you know, stuff where, and then they had no limits, and they could do all these amazing things, and all these amazing filmmakers emerged out of that. Nowadays, I think you have to really be able to prove that you're going to make something that's going to fit in the marketplace and find like it's an audience, you know, in Australia and abroad, and you know, it's really you have to have those business smarts still, even though it's sort of government supported. I mean, actually, if it wasn't government supported in Australia, there'd be no other option to make those films, because we don't have the philanthropy or like the business kind of, I don't know, like the capital in Australia to sort of make for people to want to invest in these kinds of projects otherwise. So yeah.
Do you guys use Kickstarter and things like that?
Yeah, we do have that. We've got one in Australia called Possible, and like crowdfunding is coming into play. Again, I don't know if Australians have pockets as deep as Americans do. Americans seem to have some philosophy around like, oh yeah, you tithe or you give money to, you know, charitable things, and you know, like for Australians it's a bit like, oh come on, fair suck of the sav kind of thing, you know, like, and all these Aussie sayings where they're like basically saying I'm cheap. And so yeah, you sort of got to like make do a little bit, but it does work. For in Australia, we sort of tend to use those crowdfunding options for very specific things. So you're like, we just want to raise enough for, you know, like our grade, you know, like, or, you know, in post-production. And that seems to sort of focus people to sort of say, oh, okay, if you just need it for that one tiny thing, you can sort of build a little campaign around that. So, you know, so yeah, it's becoming more popular though. It's especially for short films and things like that. Yeah.
Brittany, you work on multiple projects, so how do you balance all of that, both projects that other people direct and also your own work? And does it enhance one another in different ways?
I'm still trying to figure this out also.
We'll just solve it right here.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys 20 minutes.
I think to the extent I've succeeded and failed in the past, it's sort of, you know, being flexible, you know, not feeling like things have to be a certain way because things are always changing and my schedule and structure is always changing. And I think also to the extent that I've surrounded myself who are supportive, surrounded myself with people who are supportive of what I'm doing. You know, when there are people who are not supportive, it's much harder to do these kinds of things because, you know, like I said, schedules are crazy. You're traveling here or there. You're doing something totally different. You know, you're out in the field and things are like this, and then you're in the edit suite and things are like this. And you know, you need people who are understanding of that, I think, and also willing to be flexible. And so I think that's something that's that can make or break your personal life, I think, when you're on these kinds of projects.
And I kind of feel like the way our world is now in the digital age, really, if you're not flexible, I can't imagine surviving because it's changing so quickly and roles are changing. So it's a good point. So I've done a little bit of research, and Kris, it's kind of amazing to me because I believe that you've been a teacher and maybe owned an ice cream store and had a baby, and this is not her first feature film. You make me feel a little lazy. Clearly, you just need to tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm all over the place.
Well, it sounds very impressive, can I say that?
Thanks, that's good to hear, yeah.
Even one of those projects seems huge to me.
Well, you're a mom.
That's true. And I think that's honestly when people started saying to me, wow, you juggle so much. And it's sort of like, in fact, I was listening to some podcast recently. It was some big, fat, famous person in politics that I can't remember who. But, and one of our people who's running for an election right now said, and I figured out she could just get flex time and work at her own time. And then I was like, you know what? This isn't really the answer that I work at 2 a.m. every night. Right. Like, if that's the solution, I really think we should come up with another one.
I don't know what
because
I'm
at
doing.
some point, sleep deprivation really makes you stupid. I feel like that's where I am
I have a problem, too, because film is not, like, my only passion in life, although I am passionate about film. And I went to school. I got my undergrad in film production and planned on making films, but I also have a great passion. I mean, I have a 2-year-old, so obviously I care about him a lot. And I have my master's in education, and I'm very passionate about public education, especially for, you know, low-income children. And I used to teach high school on the west side of Chicago for a couple years. And then randomly I started an ice cream company. In the midst of all of this.
You're just bored.
We got, when my husband and I got married, we got an ice cream maker as a wedding present. And I just became obsessed with making ice cream. And then I started this company, and I was like, oh, it'll just be like a little thing. And then it became a really big thing. And then I got shut down by the state of Illinois, and it was like really dramatic and horrible.
For like,
well,
we don't have to talk about
we
it.
can change the subject of this panel if you want.
I'll have to take you to Sparky's.
I've been to Sparky's, and it's great.
You've been here.
Yeah, I've been. No, but yeah. Anyway, so I have my challenge, I think, is not only time and money, but also where I devote any of my energy. And I never, you know, and I have these sort of identity crises all the time where I'm like, what am I doing? What should I be focusing on? And my husband is like, just pick one thing and just go with it. And I can't, because I really do care about all of these different facets. And so, you know, part of me thinks, well, because you're doing all of these things, you're not doing anything really well. And that's my fear. But then my fear and you know, part of me thinks that the reason why I have all these things going on is like, if something happens and one drops out, like my company gets shut down by the state, they don't have all these other things to do. So I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism or what, but anyway, I'm always, I don't know. And now that I have a kid and I'm not making an income, I'm staying home with them and my husband's making the money, it is like a full-time job, like people say, and I have about 3 hours a day to myself. Like an hour nap, and then he goes to bed at 8, and then...
And for me, the hardest part about that is I used to be able to follow the flow of my own creative impulse, and now it's like, I must be creative from 1 to 3, because that is when I have time to be creative.
Absolutely. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll watch Glee.
And then you hate yourself, because
and then
you
I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Done that precious job. Yes, I know.
Yeah, so...
Supposedly, everybody just tells me it gets better when they get older.
That's right. You know, and that's really like what I keep telling myself is that this is temporary. He's gonna be in school.
Yeah.
You know, he's 2. He'll be 3 next year, and then maybe he'll be in preschool a couple days a week. I don't know. And then I'll have time to do that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to remember that. It's hard. It's what my movie's about, sort of. Maybe everyone should see my movie.
You should. I mean, I said that your movie struck me because I've actually wondered why we haven't had more movies on that topic. Yeah. And obviously it's a selfish thing. Now that I'm in that phase of my life, where are all the movies about me? So thank you for making that.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Capella, as a producer as well, you produce multiple things, and the list is long. So how do you, like for instance, the film with Arnell, that I would imagine takes stop a lot of the other stuff, focus on this for right now. How do you figure out how to do that, especially when you're self-financing things? And everything else, whatever.
I think my biggest problem is I don't think about it, I just do it. Mm-hmm. So, honestly, when we were in the Starbucks parking lot and I was like, let's go, I didn't think about who was going to take my kids to football practice and stuff. I just, I have supportive people, so I'm lucky. So I just do stuff. And I'm 100% in. So, everyone asks me now that this is starting to wind down, what's my next one? But honestly, I have a few things that I'm kind of lightly thinking about, but nothing I feel as strong about as I did, to just when I started this one. So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
I just go for it.
Yeah.
100%, and I'm in. And then when it's over, you kind of sit and you're in shock for a second, and then you figure something else out to do, and you just go for it, 100%. But to help finance it, I do produce TV commercials and stuff like that. So I have a couple clients that I've had for many, many years. They keep me busy, and I make decent money and able to support, myself and part of my family and projects that I'm on.
I think that's the only way to do it, is if you're 100% in, because it's, otherwise it's grueling and silly to do all that.
No, yeah.
I mean, you have to be passionate about it, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And Juliet, you're I think the first time we've ever had a filmmaker who is also a physician, which seems really amazing to me. So how does that work?
Midlife crisis.
Gotcha, okay. No. We have another film about that, Love and Other Anxieties. You should go see.
No, I mean, I was looking for something creative and non-academic, so I went through the phase of going to art school and dressing like a goth hippie and really enjoying myself, and how I kind of learned to balance it is on my medicine days, I'm one person, and on my creative days, I'm another person. And I think over time they've kind of merged, so now I'm just in each of my roles quite crazy. So, yeah, and it kind of happened accidentally. I didn't have a game plan or any specific career focus for the creative part, and I stumbled onto film, and it just, for some reason, clicked, and I fell in love with it, got the bug. And things escalated, and so now how I balance it, I work as a family doctor part-time, and I found that on days that I do medicine, I can't be creative. By the time I get home at night, I find it very hard to write. So unless I've got a deadline, I have to force those creativity between that hour and that hour. Then when I have my days off, I treat it like a job. It's just a different job, because to get anything done, you really do have to make sure that you don't waste your time. Yeah.
We have no time wasters here. I have asked some questions. I'd be curious if you guys have any questions, or, I mean, it could be a little off topic if something sort of...
Thank you you all for coming from far away places to what is quickly becoming, I think, one of the best film festivals here in the Midwest. So my question to each of you is actually, how did you get the film that you brought here funded?
The money question. How did we heard credit cards.
Well, Existence was publicly funded through the New Zealand Film Commission, and it was part of a talent development scheme is trying to move filmmakers. In New Zealand, we're very good at our short films, and it's quite hard to move from short films to feature films. So it's a scheme that is trying to develop the filmmakers to the next step. So the way it worked is, you put in, it was kind of almost like a competition. You put in your application, and then you get to the next stage and to the next stage until you get greenlit. And essentially you've got a set budget, and you're not supposed to go beyond that budget or look outside for additional money. So that I suppose it's a training ground, yeah. And that's how we got funded.
Many questions.
Sun Don't Shine was a mixture. We started with crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. We actually used Chip-In, which I had never heard of until we were using it, and we're pretty successful with that. And we're able to get the first leg of production paid for via crowdfunding. But
is
then,
that like Kickstarter where you have prizes and stuff like that? Or
no, it's not like
that's
that.
Nice.
Yeah, and you don't have to get all of the money.
That's extra nice.
Yes.
That's
so
great.
whatever you have your goal, and however close you get to it, you still get that money.
That's cool.
And we were able to tack on a percentage of what we raised went to a domestic violence shelter in St. Petersburg. So we were able to combine it, so it wasn't just us figuring out how to pay for a movie, but we were actually helping a community, essentially. And then we filmed for a while and realized we needed, more film, and we needed to shoot some more footage. So we actually looked for private investors, and were able to pull together an LLC with private investors and get the rest of our funding. But again, it was so micro budget. It wasn't. It's always a huge feat to get the money, but it wasn't as ambitious as some of the other films, because we had kind of a very small production, and then we have pulled together a few grants as well, so it's a big combo.
Yeah, and if you're new to filmmaking, we've been talking about crowdsourcing, which there's several programs that you can use, Kickstarter as well as Chip-In. I'm not familiar with, so I'll have to look into that, and Indiegogo. So if you're filmmakers out there, you might look at these and see, because they are quite popular now, and there's certain parameters depending on which ones you choose. So, ladies, how do you pay for it?
Well, Orchids was a really long process, and actually at the beginning, it was sort of self-funded, I suppose, and then I decided to take it because I have my PhD in film and television studies, and I took the concept of orchids there and said, I want to make a creative practice theory around sort of developing this idea. So that sort of gave me a few years, because as I was saying earlier, I went really baby steps because I felt very afraid of how to expose this story kind of thing. So I felt that was a very protected, cloistered way, and because I got a scholarship to do it as well, it sort of gave me that income to keep going with that, and then also the space to keep working on other documentary projects. So it was really good, nice, steady, and that probably took it up to maybe like a rough cut, and then we took that to the ABC in Australia, which is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and they gave me a pre-sale for that, and from that I was able to, once you have your pre-sale in Australia for documentary, you can then take it to the funding bodies like Screen Australia, and we took it to our state funding body, which is called Screen Queensland, and they sort of then chipped in the rest of the budget to sort of finish the film off, more or less. I mean, there was a bit more shooting we had to do, but then there was a lot of post in terms of like a complete re-edit with a real gun kind of editor, and like grade, music composition, all that sort of thing cost a lot. Animation, that's right. So yeah, all these things I'd been dreaming about that I would really love if I had extra money, sort of then all came to fruition that way. So, so that's how I pulled the money together for that one.
That's a good lesson in patience, if you have this idea, just being patient.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something in documentary especially too. You can maybe like how your directors did, like just picked up the camera and start shooting. You know, if you've got a good idea or see something that's really great, it's, you know, yes, the sensible thing is to sort of run around and get all your money and your budgets in place and everything, but you can do that, and then, you know, because it will take a long time anyway, so, you know, and there's no kind of formulaic kind of way of getting that funding together, so I sort of tend to encourage other, you know, student filmmakers, etc., if they see a good story, just start shooting about it now, and then start worrying about the money maybe a bit later if you can't find it straight away.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice.
You almost always have to have something to get something. You can't just have an idea, because everybody has an idea. You have to have something that shows that you can actually do something with your idea. So Sexy Baby was almost entirely self-funded. To this day, it was completely self-funded until Rough Cut, which is pretty extreme. We got a little bit of investment type money and small grant or two. But even to this day, this fundraising is ongoing. We will be getting some money from a TV sale at some point. The TV sale is not final, but it's pretty much a done deal. But I don't think that money is coming in until sometime next year. So we're all waiting to get paid.
It's tricky with documentary because, I mean, I feel like, well, I think it's tricky in both. I feel like in fiction, there's almost no grants that you could even get in the same way. I mean, there are, but there's not much. And with documentary, I feel like really all that's out there is finishing funds, which means you have to shoot your film first to then finish it. And so if you don't start shooting, especially since the digital age is there, they expect to see what they're going to get. And then maybe a TV will come in and help you edit it, and probably not. In your case, that's great that you might be getting some money from your TV deal.
Yeah, I don't think it'll cover. I mean,
it's never.
I think you're always lucky if you even break even on docs at least. I mean, just getting paid for like your basic labor and your expenses is really an accomplishment.
Yes.
Especially on the first few films.
Yeah.
I think that's almost all you can expect.
Other questions? We probably have time for one or two more.
You know, this is a women's festival, and you're all women filmmakers, producers. Can you guys talk a little bit about, you know, how you define yourselves? If you define yourself as a woman filmmaker first, this is based on conversation I've been having recently with a lot of other filmmakers, and also too in relation to that, when you assemble your team, do you consciously choose women producers, like with Ramona? Did Ramona, you know, is that, I know you guys are friends, or, you know, how do you go about that process? Like, does it play into it at all, or is it more just about the project and then it kind of works out that way?
I can say, Ramona and I, we lived close, so we always kind of wanted to work together, but we didn't have an appropriate project. But our team started to form, and we just ended up being all women. I mean, everything from our lawyers to our publicists, to our editor, to our post-production supervisor, to our DP. I mean, they just all ended up being these awesome women, and it wasn't a conscious decision so much. It's just they were the best people for the job, right? So, I mean, we do have one very important man on our team. His name is Josh Green, and it's always been Ramona, Josh, and myself, pretty much for the whole 4.5, 5 years. But I mean, the team is like all women, and it's really cool. So, I've always been very proud of that. And every time we had a new team member, whether it be a new lawyer or our publicist or whoever came out, I was like, it's a woman. You know, it's a woman, right, girl? So, yeah, it wasn't conscious, but it just kept forming that way, and I'm very proud of it.
One of your questions was, how do you introduce yourself as a woman filmmaker? You mean instead of just like a filmmaker? Yeah. I would just introduce myself as a filmmaker, but it's interesting because I have been on a lot of women in film panels, because if you're a woman at a film festival, you invariably get asked to be on it. This one doesn't count as much because everyone is women. So this one is excluded. But when were you on the panel with me in Maryland, Kim? Mm-mm. No. But anyway, there was a panel there, and everybody was supposed to go around and talk about why it was so challenging to be a female filmmaker. And almost everyone, excluding, you know, there was like a couple of older women on the panel, everyone sort of said, oh, that hasn't been my biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't been for me. Now, I haven't ever had to go into a studio and pitch for executives before. and have them look at me like, oh, you're just a girl or something like that, which I can imagine would just suck and definitely happen. But for me, it hasn't been a challenge to do that. But I did another sort of point about this, and I think about it all the time, is that I just got interviewed. I was just playing at the Chicago International Film Festival, and I got interviewed by someone, and they wrote a really nice review, and I read it, and I was like, great. And then he called me afterwards, and he said, I just want to apologize. I feel so bad that the only filmmakers I compared you to were female filmmakers. He compared me to Kelly Reichardt and to Chantal Ackerman. And I didn't even notice, because I was like, oh, that's cool, they're cool. Yeah. And then I realized that's the only I've ever been compared to are other female filmmakers, as though we're in a different category. And it kind of blew my mind when he said that, and I realized, I sort of looked back at all of these reviews that I had gotten. I had never been compared to a male filmmaker, which is really interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Disturbing, but
I feel like independent film is different. I mean, it's I teach students, and they go out and do all these different things, and we have guests come, and I definitely get the sense that independent film is one way, but then if you're in more of Hollywood type world, then it's a different way.
Right.
Because sometimes I feel like we're a women's college, Stevens College, and so when I first started working here and we had classes in the studio, I was like, wait a second, like it just looked different. I was like, okay, even the person holding the boom mic and the person back there directing, they're all women.
I just got excited walking on campus today.
Right, and honestly, I mean, the only other woman I even know in town that makes movies was Kim Sherman. And anytime I was on set, I realized, oh yeah, I guess I was maybe the only woman. And this is in different countries as well, so I don't think it's specific to here. And yet we create this false reality that's not a big deal when you're here, but then they'll go out to these internships and be like, you know what, it's kind of different. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I feel like it's nice that it's not an issue. Like, they're not labeled, you're a female filmmaker. They're just like, I'm here to learn film.
Here?
Yeah, but then they go out there and then they're labeled that constantly.
Yeah, I went to a high school in Memphis, Tennessee that had a television program sort of like this, and it was like hooked up to the local public access station, and the girls in the class just weren't allowed to do camera, or it wasn't a written down rule. It just had never happened. There was never a girl. We were allowed to do teleprompter and produce.
Oh my god!
Wow. And floor director. I forgot. And floor director.
Oh my gosh! We'll let you go back there.
Yes.
I think I have a little bit of a different take, because I have worked in horror a lot, and I do think that that's a different world. Because I do feel like, though I've been treated very fairly and very well, I did notice where women are not often treated as equals. The conversations are very different on a horror set. The fan base is usually men, and that changes a lot of the way stories are told. And I do think that that's changing, and I do think it's a little different, but I do feel like I've run into sexism. I've witnessed it, not so much as a producer, but witnessing it with regard to how actresses are treated differently than actors, and how crew members are, treated on sets like that, where you're talking about a genre that has a past of marginalizing women, and how that can carry over into the working atmosphere in creating horror films. And I think Amy Simetz and I actually worked on a few horror films together and kind of bonded over, not really verbally, but when she went to look for a producer for her feature, she'd worked with a lot of men in horror and various aspects, and she looked to me because I think she has stated that she did like the way that I carried myself in the middle of this group of guys on these horror sets, and was able to, I wasn't so much aware, like, I'm a woman and I'm going to do things completely differently because I'm a woman, but I think that she noticed a difference in the way that I carried myself, and it's something like I work a lot with Stephen's students, and it's something that they come on our sets, and I'm always very protective of the women that come onto the sets, especially the horror sets. Because there's not a whole lot of protection for women in this industry as far as sexual harassment is concerned, and you can see, especially younger, more inexperienced women coming onto a set, dealing with men who can often be very inappropriate, and not seeing how that can endanger their jobs and their careers, and trying to make women aware of that, just constantly doing your job the best you can and not getting caught in these traps that can eventually cause you to lose your job, and witnessing that happen a few times. So.
Wow. And I've seen you do that, and it's really exceptional, because honestly I don't know that anybody else would do that for them, and their experience would be totally different. It's kind of like you're letting them learn some lessons the easier way rather than the harder way to get the potential, but to get the potential of their career.
It's so maternal of you, just like a woman.
Well, I think if someone who would even, to me what's dangerous is what we don't notice. It's not so much there's ever overt, I don't want women to make it. It's just like there's some accepted standards that are sort of weird.
That even you accept. I mean, that's the scary thing, that even you're
absolutely.
like, oh, this is how it is, wait a second. Yeah.
Because, and I think horror, that's interesting what you say about genre, because it's such an interesting contradiction as a genre, and then I guess maybe even the production of it. I mean, a lot of women love horror films as well. So.
And I was lucky to work with men that I feel were very, very respectful of me, and never made me feel like, oh, you're just no, and like very much valued my opinion and gave me great opportunities. And it's just that there's some lines crossed, and honestly, on the first film that I worked on, I was aware of those lines being crossed, but did not see where the people involved in that were being affected in a negative way. And by this time I went to set the next time, I was able to see that and to say, no, this is actually an issue. This is something that could affect these people very negatively, and it needs to not be a part of this production. This production needs to be very healthy, and we all just need to do our jobs.
Professionalism.
Yeah.
The greatest challenge we have for our festival is that explain that just because they're female filmmakers, that other people can appreciate their films.
Not just
I mean, again, this is just some accepted standard. It's like, well, gosh, I go to the theater and I don't say, wow, a man directed that. I don't think I'm going to go see it. That's not made for me. So it's just so weird that, and that's honestly why our name is Citizen Jane Film Festival, not like Women's Film Festival, because we feel like to support women filmmakers, it's to get people to see their movies, and that means to accept them just as filmmakers that can make a wide variety of films. And I think sometimes when you make a movie with a female protagonist now at all, that gets labeled, and why is that? That seems, again, I think that's an accepted standard that really would be great if that changed. And we kind of say this is our coming out party in year 5. It turns out we're a women's film festival. But I think you should still go see their films. And like the first year we did it, we had 1 male volunteer. So even the idea to build a festival, we have another film festival in town and there's tons of male volunteers. So it's so interesting that for this one, well, maybe just women could build a festival. And so what we realized is we have to work around that. We had to actually go out and proactively recruit men, and I appreciate all the men that helped build our festival, because they kind of did something many men don't do for whatever reason. And I feel that way about female filmmakers. I don't think progress would be sort of nice if we weren't labeled at that. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we don't label male filmmakers.
Right.
You're a male filmmaker.
Right.
So that's why we do Citizen Jane. I think that's a nice time to wrap up. We have 2 more panels coming this afternoon. The next panel is about the art of short filmmaking, which, especially if you're new to filmmaking, that's typically how some people get started. But it's also, I still continue to make short films. It's a genre that I think is sometimes underappreciated and something you only catch at film festivals. We have 4 different shorts programs this weekend, and they're gems, so I really hope you go to see them. We also have a panel that's all about women in film. Nora would love it. She's looking at us going, thank you, I'm not on it. And that's later, so enjoy. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Columbia Access Television for doing all of this. Thank you very much.